Hello everybody and welcome to the season review vlog of Avatar The Last Airbender Season 3. The last season. Book of Fire. Oh my, this season truly was something spectacular. For it not only ended the series, but it ended in a big way, but also in a very satisfying way. And in my opinion, the season ended perfectly. And I'm very happy with how they closed out just about every plot, every single detail in the story, so that we were left satisfied. And the ending left us with no unanswered questions that we, or at least nothing relating to this overall story, and except for one kind of a big question, but that was only left for possible future continuation, and also as a sign of promise that the life of the people still continues onward even though the series is over. I have a feeling this will be the shortest season review vlog I'll ever do, since there's not that much to say, since I believe the commentaries I made on the episodes were very satisfying and they very well wrapped up my feelings about the episodes. But I will be talking about just about every episode, and in more detail I will be talking about every last part of the finale, because there's a lot to talk about there. But first off, let's go through over the simplistic things. I was very happy about this season, just in general. In my opinion, it was the best season. Of course, naturally, it's the last season, but they improved on the many aspects, like, for example, the animation got a lot better, the sound effects got a lot better, the style of storytelling got a lot more creative and a lot more expressive and a lot more artistic, but there are arguments to be made that there are a lot of sort of filler episodes and a lot of episodes that are not that important, and there was material that could have been cut out, and there were things that were unnecessary. I have one episode in particular that comes to mind. Two, if I have to go more into detail about those, actually a bit more. But those are actually very important, since one of the main themes of Avatar has been that it's a travel series. It's always not about the destination, but more about the journey, at least in my eyes. Even though the destination when we arrived there, oh my, it's been a blast. Every season finale has been a huge spectacular fight with more emotion loaded into them than any other episodes, and it's very well done. But still, the journey is by far the most important part, since we get to see the characters' growth and their struggles, as well as their motivations and their changes in real time almost. And that's a very important thing for travel series, and that's what makes it important. And in that sense, even the filler episodes are more important. I will talk about this in the filler episodes vlog, or you can already go check it out. If it's already up, annotation here or something, I don't know. Link in the description. Yeah, so I feel like this episode, it was compared that this episode is more of a hybrid between the first season and the second season, where the second season was very much focused in a one central story, and it deviated very little from it, even though it did, but it did just very minor, and it really focused on the central story that came to fruition in the latter half of the season. And while the first season was a collection of mini stories, and it was truly a travel series, while in the last season here we have definitely a hybrid between the two, where we have a destination and there's a clear goal in mind, but most of the episodes are focused on central little stories that happen across the journey. While there are some stories that carry over throughout the season and are continued in many episodes, such as there are many just two-parter episodes, such as the Day of the Black Sun, Boiling Rock, and of course the finale, which is amazing four-parter. But majority of the episodes also fit together very well, and I feel like the pacing in this season is a lot better done. It's the best, well, it's the best paced season of the three. in my opinion. Of course, there are arguments to be made that the second season was better since it was more streamlined and more focused on the central story, and it had a very much more streamlined approach to its storytelling, and it was a lot less subtle in some ways, but a lot more understandable in many circumstances. And so I can personally agree with some people who would say that the second season is the best. I personally think that the third season is the best, but that's just because I prefer, well, I just really, because it has one of my favorite animated moments ever, which is the Agni Kai between Zuko and I'm really blanking out on her name. Oh my god, I'm really blanking out on her name. Excuse me. Apologies for the slight interruption. So one of my favorite moments was the Agni Kai between Zuko and Azula. Yeah, I remember that name. So yeah, that's why I think it's my favorite season. Just purely because of that moment, and also because the whole last 4 episodes are, in my opinion, very well made, so that they fit very well together and they are perfect ending the series. Then let's talk about in general. I think about one of the major and drastic differences between the seasons has always been the increase in animation quality, and it was very noticeable in the first episodes always. And since I'm doing this, when I did the commentaries, I did them in the format that I did them almost daily. And when I moved on to the third season, there was like maybe 1 day of a difference between the ending of season 2 and beginning of season 3. A few days, anyways, and that's why it was so noticeable. And has always been in shows that have multiple seasons. That's one of the best things to see how the animation quality has improved. And yes, here it's very noticeable since the animation stepped a lot. It still has some of the minor negative qualities of the previous season, such as it is sometimes jagged and it is sometimes very simplistic, but it's by no means is it anymore. It is no longer in any way distracting. It could be if you're jumping from a very well animated series to Avatar. I don't mean this as an insult, by the way, to Avatar, but I mean like a series that has an amazing animation, and you jump to Avatar, you can immediately notice that there are some frame skips, should I say, that there are some animation parts. The animation has some missing frames, although that's more of a stylistic choice, and it gives it that certain type of feeling, and it still is prevalent in the third season, and I by no means mean that that is a bad thing. I said it's an artistic choice, and I do mean it. It gives that certain type of feeling. It is still noticeable, but it is by no means bad, and it's a lot better and smoother than in the first 2 seasons. Even then, in the second season it was by no means bad, and in the first season it was by no means too distracting. And one of the best things about the whole animation thing has been, well, we got to see a lot more lightning in this season, and my god, the animation on the lightning is some of the, even though the lightning isn't fluid, so to say, that it isn't the fluid, flexible, immediate lightning that I am accustomed to from other animations, it's a lot more impactful, since lightning does represent something else in the series other than the destructive power of nature, or rather the electrical current. It represents something deep inside the character, and the lightning in the show has that huge impact. It's something that it has a destructive force behind it that is immeasurable by other bending, and that has been carried over in the animation of lightning so well. It's in some ways a lot more heavier element than Earth, even though that's kind of a impossibility, but you know what I mean. It seems when someone bends lightning, it carries a lot more impact behind it, and that's an incredible thing to do, and it looks really cool. Also, one of my personal favorite things about Avatar is how well the backgrounds and costumes are designed, since they are clearly taking inspiration from real life, but mostly just taking inspiration, and they are taking inspiration in a way that has always done the animators a lot of service, in that they don't have to actually animate that much, since they do pay a lot of attention to facial expressions. But when they have something, let's say a mask in front of them, they don't have to animate as much. And at the same time, masks symbolize something else that I won't be going into too much detail here, but it's an important part to the show that they do even have masks. And also, that's a very important part, since that means that's a lot of taking a lot of influence from real life in a very, very creative and a cool, interesting way. And a lot of the show's environments and locales are taking a lot of inspiration from different towns and cities and just locations in real life. But they are taking inspirations and making them their own spin on that thing. And it's a very interesting thing to follow. And since we get to see in this season a lot more from the Fire Nation, we got to see that it's the whole world seems a lot more holistic, and it seems a lot more real, since it seems that it has its own culture behind it. And even though the areas in Fire Nation are different from each other, there's this huge central theme going around them of, well, nationalism and strict rules. And it's carried throughout the whole third season that's the whole central focus of Fire Nation. And it's portrayed very well in their costumes and their building designs, in my opinion, at the very least. But that's what it seems like to me. And it's a very cool thing to see that it takes a lot of influence from certain countries in the real world. And I really do like that kind of a nod to the real world, that even though you could consider it to be lazy to take influence from other worlds, I don't think that's in any way lazy to take influence from other worlds, from real world, but rather it's a very, very creative and a cool way to acknowledge the existence of real life besides the TV, you know? Oh wow, that sounded so stupid. Whatever. Yeah. Then one of the other things that I have very much enjoyed in this season, well, every season, I have very much talked about the sound quality, or rather the sound design, and how I've applauded this show for its excellent use of sound effects. And yeah, that doesn't change in this season at all. The sound effects are always pristine, and they are very clear, and they symbolize the element, maybe unrealistically so, but it emphasizes the effect that the element has, and that is very incredible. And it's very well done, and it's, again, sound effects are very minor part, and it doesn't get acknowledged often, but in my opinion, it's one of the most central and important things in Avatar that makes the battles seem entertaining and makes the normal moments seem a lot more normal, and contrasts the battles between the normal moments very well. Since in battles there's a lot more sound effects, and in real life, in actual moments, there are sound effects, but they are used less than, because there's a lot less bending happening. There's less need for sound effects, and that's very well rounded out thing for me to see that there's a lot of perspective between battle and casual conversations, and the tension between when a moment escalates into a battle. That's a very, very noticeable difference, since there's a huge difference in the sound and how it escalates into the battle. And then we move on to the sound design in general. I very much feel like the sound design in this season is by far the best in the seasons, but well, a lot better. Well, it's hard to say a lot better, since the previous seasons had a very excellent sound design as well, but it's very excellent in this season, and I am so satisfied by it as a huge sound design buff. Apologies again. Then I must address one of the, like, I'm going to talk about this in a lot more detail later on when I do a few things, but the whole soundtrack thing of Avatar. Since background music is very important to every show, and the lack of sound is also very important, it's very interesting to see how the background music in Avatar is something that is both like it's something that you don't even realize is there, which is the purpose of background music, and it reinforces the sounds very well. So if you have just listened to or just watched the show, you don't actually remember majority of the songs, since you are paying so much attention to the story. At least I was. I mean, people are different, but that's also like but if you listen to the sounds, if you listen to the soundtrack alone, it's by no means bad. It's very entertaining, and it's very, like, I kind of want to talk about this more, but I have already said this in the previous season review logs, that the soundtracks are very excellent, and they are again taking influence from real world cultures, and they very well fit the whole theme or the settings that they are played in, and that's a very cool thing. And this also leads to the like, the soundtracks have not changed that much between the seasons, and their use hasn't changed that much. But there's one particular moment that I already mentioned, and that is the Agni Kai. That final Agni Kai between Azula and Zuko. In that moment, God, I want to save this for that. Okay, I'm gonna save that for that moment, but just to say it here quickly. In that moment, they chose to reinforce the music, because the music was very emotional, and it was very heavily loaded music. It was something that you had to, when it was reinforced more, they more put forward the soundtrack instead of the effects. It created a much more emotional bond, and let us focus a lot more on the whole emotional impact and the meaning behind the Agni Kai, instead of the actual actions of the Agni Kai and how it was going. But I will be talking more about that when I come to that episode. Then about overall character. One of the most interesting things about this season was that how well it rounded out the character arcs of everybody, actually, and how well we got to see just every character evolve during the course of the series. Aang has been always an interesting character to follow, since he is the hero, and he is the chosen one. He is the hero by destiny. Chosen by destiny, but he is reluctant to do so. However, he faces his destiny with pride and designation, but he doesn't accept it as his own without his own consent, and he changes his destiny to fit his own purpose. And that's a very interesting thing to see. A hero accepting his destiny, fighting against it, accepting it again, but changing it for his own. That's a very cliche thing to do, but it's the way they have represented it. It makes it seem a lot more relatable and a lot more humane, as well as entertaining and interesting in a scholarly discussion manner at the same time. I could just talk about a lot more about Aang in detail, since he's definitely one of the most interesting characters I have ever seen, since he's struggling with the predetermined destiny, and predeterminism is also one of the central focuses of the show, although it's not very heavily reinforced, but it's something that I could really talk about for very long, and I will eventually. Then again, we get to see Zuko change sides, and that again is something very interesting. And even though it was very, very clear, it was actually very clear to me from the ending of the first season that Zuko would change sides. It was done in a, well, as I said, you can go watch the episode 12 commentary, and you can see how well it is done. Like, it's by no means unrealistic, and it's done very believably, in my opinion. And the whole character arc of the next episodes just focus on Zuko's adventures with each of the characters, except Toph, of course, which they also comment on, and that's funny. And that's very interesting to me, and I really do like that whole nod to that thing, since they realize that's their recurring theme, and it's a funny joke. And yeah, Zuko is my favorite character, but that's just because he reminds me a lot of Anakin Skywalker, mostly in the, well, only in the good parts, should I say. Only in good ways, that he is the anti-hero, and he doesn't change, his character doesn't change drastically, and there was one episode in season 2 where his character changed drastically, but that was only because he was confused, and he wasn't sure what he was going to do. And the change in the season 3 is a lot more believable and a lot more, well, Zuko feels Zuko throughout the whole season 3, and that's what I'm very happy about. Then I'm not gonna mention a lot more about the other characters. Sokka's character got a lot more fleshed out, and I must say I didn't expect to grow in love with Sokka as much as I did. Sokka is definitely my second favorite character because, and I'm very surprised to say that, because I was very certain at the first season that I was going to hate him because he was the comic relief. But it turned out that he's actually a very insightful fella with a interesting character philosophy and interesting backstory and skills unique to him, and he's a unique character in a very, very unique situation, since he's the only non-bender in the group. And he's also a very interesting character to follow. But I have already talked about a lot about him in other videos, and I will probably talk about him a lot in the future. So I won't. And there's also one episode that I'm going to have to talk about him in a lot more detail. And then let's talk about Toph, because she has been a constant. She hasn't really changed all that much. She has learned few things, and she has changed minor, but those changes have mostly been minor, and I am very, well, not very, but I'm slightly disappointed that there was nothing major that happened with Toph. She is definitely very enjoyable, and I do enjoy her a lot, and she still kicks ass, and she is very amazingly powerful, and I do enjoy her a lot. But she didn't change all that much. Even her character development during the season 3 was very minimal, if non-existent, I must say. But that, well, actually, that is a complaint against the show. But that's very minor. And I'm happy that there's at least, it's very important for a show to have a constant in the show that doesn't really change during the show, that we know that doesn't change that much, actually. And it's very interesting that Toph is the one to do that, but her element is the rock, or earth rather, and so it makes a lot of sense for her to embody the element that she bends, well, in her personality as well. Yeah, that's very interesting. And then let's quickly mention Katara before I move on to the episodes themselves. Yeah, Katara was, I am still not very, what should I say? I'm not very much a fan of Katara, much to the despise of many, many of you, I'm certain. But this is by no means to say that I do not like her. I do not, or how should I, it's hard to word this correctly. I enjoy her as a character. I do not like her as a, well, no, I do kind of like her, but how, it's really hard to say. I like how she is presented, but she is someone, she is, it's a very interesting juxtaposition between her and Zuko, whereas Zuko has changed mostly for the good. Katara's changes during the third season were mostly towards evil. And I like that. I like that as a lot in terms of artistic choice, since it shows that war changes people, and even those in the good side, so to say, do not change for the good always. But I will be talking a lot more about that in the future. Or rather, later in this video. There's a lot more I could go on, but those will be hopefully covered in the episodes. And let's talk about the episodes now. So, first episode is The Awakening. Yeah, I have the list of episodes here, so you don't. I'm not gonna get that confused. The Awakening, which is we get back on track with the whole story, and excuse me. We immediately get back on track to the whole story and get to the meat of things, so to say. We are shown that Aang has, well, suffered a lot of damage. We got to see a lot of new faces, and it was overall a very good opening episode. We got a lot more answers from the previous season. We got to see more from the antagonist side, and if I remember correctly, that is at least. And it showed us like a lot of future promise for the future, as well as the plan and clear goal for the people, or the main group, should I say, which was the culmination of the invasion, actually. And that was one of the most interesting events to behold, actually. And it's a very cool thing to see that at the very first episode they emphasize a clear goal that they want to do, and they are going to change after that hard, and that's interesting, and I like that aspect a lot, since this streamlines the episodes a lot more. However, this changes very quickly, as Aang is not able to cope with his failure, since he has failed on several occasions by now. And that's also one of the interesting things about Avatar as a series, that the good guys don't always win. As a matter of fact, in the second season, they lost a lot. They basically lost the war. And that's a very interesting thing to think about. They actually talked about it in this episode, or the first episode of the season, that they lost the war. Aang failed hard, miserably, and it had catastrophic consequences. And that's a very interesting thing to see, and it wasn't something I was very much expecting. And in that way, the show actually relates much more akin to the whole analogy that I had, that it resembles a lot the original Star Wars trilogy a lot in the whole structuring of the story, although it does still resemble the hero's journey a lot more, but you know. And that's by no means bad if it takes influences from other shows or the classical tale. You know, that's by no means bad. That's just something I want to point out. And then the second episode is the Hairband, and this is where Aang has to come to grips that there are certain things he has to let go for the sake of, well, the invasion to succeed, and that he has to, well, subterfuge is an interesting thing, and he has to again let people down and let the hope, so to say, he has to let the hope perish. And it's an interesting thing we got to talk about in that episode, and it's something that could actually paint a lot more curiosity. And it's also it's an interesting thing to talk about, just in general. Then we got to the third, I can't speak anymore. Third episode, The Painted Lady, and this is the episode that actually, I can't remember what I said about it originally, but upon retrospection, this is one of the episodes that is very much filler. I do not actually think that this episode accomplished anything. I see why people would enjoy this. There are certainly aspects to it that can be enjoyed. It's the episode that, on the other hand, it does have some meaning behind it, so as to show that there are, of course, poor people in the poor and downtrodden people in the Fire Nation, and that the Fire Nation is a tyrannical force even inside its own country, which we already knew. So it's kind of a pointless episode. However, since it's an important part of the journey to see that this is the Katara's kind. Again, I'm going to have to talk about Katara, but this is the first signs we see of Katara becoming selfish and more embroiled in her negative emotions, so to say. That she wants to be the savior of the people. And we get to see it a lot more in this episode. And this is an interesting thing since many people and many comments in that episode pointed out how uncharacteristic it was for Katara to be saying that she wanted to help the people and she wanted to save them. She personally. And however, I feel like even though that seems uncharacteristic of her, especially when we compare her actions to the first season or the second season even, it's by no means, in my opinion, wrong for her character to develop in a negative way. It might be negative, but it by no means means it's bad to have her develop. Since character development can be both bad and good, for both better and for worse, since characters can develop negative character traits. And that's why I very much enjoy this third season, is because we got to see this negative character or the negative character traits developing on Katara, as well as on Azula, but that's besides the point. And then, so this episode also had some cool moments. There were some enjoyable moments and some enjoyable jokes, and yeah, overall, on retrospect, I still don't really much enjoy it, but it's an episode that they could have cut, but they didn't have to cut, is what I mean. It's an episode that has its purpose there, since, well, it's the journey that counts. Then the fourth episode, Sokka's Master. And boy, this was one of my favorite episodes. It still is. And in terms of this episode, it can almost be it can be classified as filler. It can easily be classified as filler, as the only things we got to see from this episode were Sokka's Master, the guy who taught him how to melt steel, or made him his sword and taught him how to sword fight. And then we got to see Sokka learn how to sword fight and use his unique skills in battle. And that's nothing new from Sokka to see that. The only thing we got from this fourth episode was basically Sokka's character development. And it was actually not that much character development. But we got to see more insight into Sokka's character. And his character is an interesting one since, well, for previously mentioned reasons. And it's very much addressed here, and it's addressed in subtle ways how his character develops and changes. And all the things that in this episode they have little things in it that it has something that I just like. And it is that it's very relaxed and slow. It's a slow build up, but it's so well paced in my opinion that this fourth episode was so great. Although I can see why people would not enjoy it, since it's character development for Sokka. It's not the most interesting character development by any means, since he's not changing from good to evil, or he's not mind controlling people, but he is still an interesting character to follow in my opinion, since he's the everyman. He is something that all of us viewers can relate to, and that's what I think. I think the fourth episode is very, very good in my opinion, and it's very interesting to see that. I just very much enjoyed this fourth episode because it had a lot of interesting moments, and it was a lot more subtle than the other episodes. And Sokka's character development also was a lot more subtle than in the other episodes, and it also gave Sokka the promise that, or kind of, he received the White Lotus title. And that symbolizes a lot more, as we realized. He was accepted into this secret society, so to say, or rather, he was said that he has the possibility to join the secret society, and that is something I very much enjoy. I enjoy the whole White Lotus organization in general. But yeah, then the beach. Whew, this was again an episode that feels like it could have been just a filler episode. And at the first part, it does feel like filler. But the episode is spaced again so interestingly, since Avatar uses this two-part pacing method, which means that the first part is always build-up, and in the second part there's just the climax and the culmination of every event that has been shown in the episode, or culmination of previous events in the previous episodes. And that's something that's very well represented here, since the first part is, in my opinion, unbearably awful. It's just silly things that I don't enjoy that much. But then we get to the second part, and it has a lot more. Like, there is that campfire scene where they talk, and that scene just made the episode worth it for me. Since it very much, even though it was a lot, that episode again, it's a bad thing to say. I kind of want to say I don't like this episode because the campfire scene was just the characters blatantly talking to each other, and it was a lot more telling than showing, which is actually what you shouldn't do in a show. But it was so good. I really don't mind it, but they should have it. It's just on my critical side of thinking, I want to say that it's bad, since it was telling, not showing. But personally, I enjoyed it so much, it doesn't bother me that it was just telling. Yeah, that's my whole view on the show episode. And yeah, it feels like it had a lot more purpose, but again, it's an episode that could have been cut. But I'm glad they didn't. And that's going to be a recurring theme during this season. There are a lot of episodes that could have been cut, or that could have been fused together, or that could have been used for something else, but I'm glad they didn't. Also, it's a pretty cool thing to see a lot more from the antagonists. I certainly hope that I'm not remembering these things wrong, because that would be kind of embarrassing, but that's just due to my poor memory. Then we got to the episode 6, which is the Avatar and the Fire Lord. It's a very cool scene, very cool episode. We got to see more of the background between the previous Avatar Roku and the Fire Lord Ozai, I think. Zozin? Ozai. Zozin? Cousin? Whatever. We got to see more from the previous Fire Lord, and I liked that. That was an episode I very much enjoyed, because we got to see more from the past Avatar, and that's something I very much enjoy, the whole past Avatar thing, since it's an interesting thing that the whole Avatar is a line of succession, and you can practically talk to multiple previous incarnations of yourself, and you could even talk with everyone, technically speaking, or theoretically speaking rather. And I like that it's addressed a lot in this episode, that Roku just shows the background, and we also get to see Zuko experience it, and we got the revelation that Zuko is also related to Roku. That's something I like. Then the Runaway. Again, the 7th episode, the Runaway, is something that there's just one scene that redeems the episode for me. There's not much else to it. Oh yeah, I'm not really talking about the Combustion Man a lot, but that's because I don't think there's a lot to say about him. Yeah, I haven't really talked about the Combustion Man at all, basically. That's because he's a force of nature villain. There's not much to say about him. He's cool, He's threatening, he's powerful, he's badass, and he's brought down by his own folly. I like him. That's all I have to say from him. Then let's move on to the episode 8. The Puppet Nest. Oh my. This was the episode that I still kind of dread, since this is the pivotal change for Katara. Oh man, I called bloodbending. I don't know why I called it, but I'm happy I did, since the shock wasn't so great. And I wasn't even shocked when it was revealed. What I was shocked, however, was how disgusting it was. The whole bloodbending seems awful. And that's a very interesting way to portray mind controlling people. It's shown in a very disgusting manner, and it's clearly painful for the subject. And it's done that it looks unnatural, and it is. And it's portrayed so well. It really fits a horror movie so well, and I really like how it's portrayed. And even though it's a cool concept, it's more what it symbolizes, and that what it symbolizes is the concept that even the most kindest element, or rather the element that has shown the most positive quality, which is the waterbending, since it is the element that can capture people without harming them, technically speaking, but with ice. Although if you entrap someone in ice, that technically kills them instantly, but that's besides the point. You know, deep freezing, it's a thing. It kills people. And it also, the subtype of waterbending is the healing, and that's an interesting thing as well. But then waterbending holds this evil secret, which is, well, bloodbending. And it's an interesting dichotomy between healing and bloodbending, since they basically use the same principle, but in a very polar opposite way. And Katara is armed with both. In a way, she's the combination of both good and evil, since she has the power to both control people and heal them. And those are both in her hands, and she does both of them, much to her dismay. I do like that a lot. And this is the moment when Katara accidentally, so to say, although I think it was on purpose, or more in panic, she bloodbends the old lady. And this is the moment that I feel like she awakened the evil within, so to say. And this is the moment where Katara full out became, or not full out, but rather awakened the evil potential inside of her. And she became a lot more twisted, so to say. And she gained the ability to be just an evil person. And even though it seems a lot, it's portrayed here as that she is very reluctant, and by no means do I mean that's bad. I feel like it's natural for every person to, well, reject the notion of them being evil, since it's unnatural for someone to be evil. Well, not technically speaking, not, but that's besides the point. Like, people don't want to be evil. Nobody is the villain of their own story. And rather, the saying goes, everybody is the hero of their own story. Well, I'm not, but that's because I'm crazy. But yeah. And here we got to see Katara just confront the fact that she has this ability to do unspeakable horrors. And it's a very interesting thing. And she's torn down by it. And I just could go on forever about it. I'm not, but that's because I think I already talked about it in quite a lot of detail. And I will probably talk about it a lot more in the future. My god, we're not even halfway through. Okay. Nightmares and daydreams. this episode I was really reluctant with. I must say it was the episode that I really don't like. I mean, that's just personal preference. It was a lot, way too goofy, and way too silly, and poorly paced in my opinion. But I can see why people would like it, and it had a lot of fun moments. And what I did enjoy about it was that it had a lot of imagination in it, and one of those, I think it was second to last nightmare sequence was truly horrifying. It had a lot of potential to be terrifying. It was really kind of creepy, and it's a very well done very well done through imagery. And that really, it showed the power of, animation, where you can show things that are unspeakably devastating to human mind. And those are just something that's very easily done, and it was very well done in that episode. But overall, the episode otherwise was so poorly paced, for me personally, that I didn't enjoy it. I can see why people did enjoy it, and I by no means am saying that it was bad. And what I can certainly appreciate in it are the numerous references. Let's speak about the most obvious reference, and that is the outfits of the, or rather, Aang's three nightmares. And in those, Aang is always dressed as a different character from different anime. Like, if I remember them correctly, I just remember the first two. He was dressed as, he resembled Goku a lot, and then Vash the Stampede. And that's awesome. And that's a cool reference. I very much enjoyed that reference. Still, the episode was not to my liking, but I can see why people would like it, and it had a lot of good things in it. It was just not based for me. Then, The Day of the Black Sun, in two parts, nonetheless. And that was an episode that when I was watching it for the first time, you could see how happy I was about it, and how thrilled I was at the prospect of the episode. And I was really, really enjoying it a lot, because it had a lot of amazing animation. It was so good action. And then, well, I watched it again, and I was disappointed. It's a one-hit miracle. You watch it once and it's amazing. Then you watch it the second time and it's quite boring, to be honest, since although the animation is interesting and there are some neat little things that happen on, I feel like there's not that much attention paid to detail in these two episodes, the episode 10 and 11. There are not that many little things that make Avatar Avatar, and that's just kind of sad. I know I was really, really enjoying myself on those when I was watching it for the first time, and I'm glad I gave you the blind commentary on that, because I was so hyped. Now I'm just sad, but it's still an enjoyable episode for the first part, and it's certainly good popcorn material. I mean, if you don't pay attention and if you're just watching it for fun, I mean, it's by no means bad. It just has nothing substantial in it. It's nothing very interesting. Mentally interesting, at least. There's nothing intellectually challenging in it. It had a lot of good moments in it, though. Like, mostly from the antagonist side. And those are very interesting. And it had one of the best conversations we've ever had in the series. At least, again, in my opinion, but the conversation between Zuko and the Fire Lord was just mind-numbingly awesome. Mind-bogglingly awesome. It was such an, well, and I mean awesome in the literal sense. That was quite the confrontation. That was so cool. And then Zuko redirected the lightning, and it was even better, and it was a very cool scene. However, I'm afraid that's the best scene in the two episodes. and the rest of the scenes are not actually that good. But they are inventive at the very least. The reason I say that at the second time viewing and when you actually think about it, it's not very interesting, is to see the invasion plan is too perfect. There are no adversities they have to overcome. There are very little problems that they have, and they are prepared for everything. And that's unfortunate, because that takes a lot of the tension away. It's amazing for the first time viewing and seeing how prepared they are, and it has a lot of cool action in it. But it's nonetheless kind of boring second time watching. Of course, again, opinion. You have yours, I have mine. Wow, this has been going on for a while. Whatever. Then the Western Area Temple, and this was the introduction of Zuko. Or rather, Zuko's joining the party. And I don't know how much I should talk about this. It's just an amazing episode. It is very slow, so to say, and it's very slow burn, and not very eventful in the end. The only actual meaningful thing that happens is the combustion man dies and Zuko joins the party. That's basically it wrapped up in whole. However, it's handled so well that I don't mind it being that simple, since it's paced very slowly for the purpose of showing that they are very reluctant to have Zuko join the party. And it's done in a very fashion that it's believable in my eyes. And we had one whole episode dedicated to Zuko joining the party, and it's really great in my opinion. It also had a lot to do with them actually Aang actually accepting that he failed once again. And that's also very interesting. Okay. I'm gonna talk about a lot more about that but then let's move on just to the 13th episode, the Firebending Masters. And my gosh, this was the first of Zuko with someone episode. It was Zuko with Aang, and I must say I enjoyed this episode thoroughly. It showed us that since Zuko no longer had a source to channel his energy from, which was previously wrath, vengeance, and mostly negative emotions, now that they had lessened, his firebending became less powerful. And it's an interesting thing to see. And he was kind of unable to teach Aang. And they went to sort out the new source of firebending, or rather, the original source. I really enjoyed that. And then we got to see two dragons, and it was very cool. And since they were taught the secret of fire, since fire is not by itself an inherently destructive force, and by every means it's more so the source of life. God, this is sounding so corny, but fire is the source of life. And I have also this theory that if you can firebend, you can technically use energy location to sense other people, like you're like firebending, oh, there's people there, and you know, this thing. And it shows us that fire is a more nebulous concept, and we got this very beautiful scene with Zuko and Aang standing in between the fires of the dragons, and that was beautiful. It was one of the most beautiful scenes in Avatar, in my opinion at least, since we got to see the whole spectrum of fire. I have often commented on how cool the Azula's blue flame is, but there's something about it that just bugs me, and that is, it's very hard to maintain a blue flame separately from other flames. Then, once I had complained about that, I did some research and found out that it's actually not that hard, and it's actually very easy. So that makes me sound, well, incredibly dumb. So I must admit, I was completely wrong on thinking how strange it was for her fire to be completely blue, and since I thought that you should actually like have some red or yellow at the edges, but I did some research and found out how wrong my understanding of the mechanical reaction of combustion was, and turns out you can have black flame. That's not racist, by the way, but turns out you can actually have every kind of flame, and you can easily sustain every type of flame, and actually you could naturally do those without any mechanical assistant. And once I get to the whole bending theory video, I will be explaining how you could, technically speaking, create every type of flame you have. And this, this is a little sidetrack, but technically speaking, blue flame isn't always hotter. You can have different colors of flame without them being different, well, not that different varieties of heat, should I say. So blue flame could be as hot as red flame, or yellow flame, or black flame, or colorless flame, but just naturally blue flame is more powerful, or rather hotter. Okay, moving on. I don't have time to speak about everything. The Boiling Rock, which is Zuko and Sokka. And it's a very interesting bonding episode, or rather two-parter episode. Episode 14 and 15. And I really enjoyed this whole, since they are the two bros, so to say, and they are two people who have actually like started relationships and have actually dealt with a lot of loss, and they are, again, they are both technically speaking royalty. Sokka less so, but you know, technically speaking, he's royalty. And they are very much handling the different sides of the war, or came from the different sides of war. It's very interesting to see the differences between Zuko. Well, Zuko actually coincides and juxtapositions himself very much with every character in the group. Like, he's very much the polar opposite of everybody, which is interesting. But at the same time, he has similarities with every one of them. So the Boiling Rock two-parting episodes, I have kind of cooled down on them, but I still do enjoy them greatly. There are a lot of strange things to say about them, but I'm going to pinpoint my favorite moment, which is the ending of the part 2, which is when Azula gets betrayed by May, and later on by Ty Lee. And this is the interesting moment when, since Azula took the passing say by betrayal, and now she herself got betrayed, and this was the moment that drove her insane. It's very interesting. It's a pivotal moment for her character, and I really enjoyed that moment because it showed that even though May and Ty Lee were working for, or with, well, working for Azula, they were doing it so basically just reluctantly, and they didn't definitely want to do bad. They weren't by no means bad people. Wow, that's a triple negative. They were by no means bad people. And that's interesting to see that they really do show that in this episode, that they just change sides very quickly. I like that again. Then let's move on. Yeah, sorry, there's not much to say about that I didn't say about in the episode. You should definitely go and check out my opinions on it though, since those two episodes were, I really did enjoy those. And then the Southern Raiders, and my god. My god! This episode. Remember what I said about Katara turning evil? Yeah. This was the episode that showed us that Katara has officially changed for the worse. And this is why I liked her. The change in her was definitely for the dark side, and she definitely became evil. But not irredeemably so. She wanted vengeance, but she was unable to take someone's life. I don't know how much I can actually talk about her here without actually going into a lot more detail, but it's just very interesting to see her be so focused on this one singular goal. And what I said about her, like, developing the potential to be evil, this is where it comes to fruition. And even though it's a very quick way to show it, I very much enjoyed it, and she even bloodbended during this episode. Again, this is a Zuko with Katara episode, and that's something I very much like. So during this episode, we can see that Katara, even though she was not able to carry out her vengeance, she was unable to let go of her hatred. But she was able to forgive Zuko, which is again interesting. I just this episode, the Southern Raiders, episode 16, is something I'm going to have to cover a lot more in detail, since it has a lot more significance other than just like, well, it very much handles the subject of vengeance. Again, a vlog that I will have done, yes, no, maybe so, will have had done, had, I don't know. It's something that I'll do it later today, or if I had already posted it, you know, link in the description or the sidebar, or, you know, look in the channel somewhere. It's probably posted, by the way, by the time this is up. But yeah, it's a very interesting episode, and it opened a lot of questions. Then the Ember Island players. Oh my. Well, it's a very interesting play, and it represented the whole show in a very quick manner. It's a one episode recap of the whole series, done just before the finale. And even though it's mostly comedic, it also has some interesting character development and interesting character moments inside of it. And I'm very glad that it was, and I'm very surprised how much I laughed, and I thoroughly enjoyed the episode. And it was by every regard better than the movie. Oh man, that movie was so painful. But yeah, this was actually a very fun episode. There's not much to say about it, but it had a lot of interesting character moments, and it had a lot. It's a very cool nod that the creators actually have paid attention to their fandom and have listened to their complaints, since they really did reference a lot of the episodes and really the fans' opinions about them. And it was cool. I really liked it, and it was a fun I really like these fan acknowledgement episodes, since those show that their creators actually do care. I mean, I do care about you a lot, like you can see from an episode that should be posted soon, or already is, whatever. And now we move on to the big final four. Oh boy. I know that I'm kind of sad that I didn't comment on that much during the episodes, but that's because the episodes were a lot more emotionally loaded for me, since it was the pivotal moment, since that it was the final video I would be doing. It would be the final commentary video I would be doing of the whole Avatar series, or at least the last Airbender Avatar series, and it had a lot more purpose behind it other than just having the finale of the season, or even the finale of the show, since this was the first actual show that I completed. And it marked quite a lot for my channel, and it was a very heavy moment for me personally during my life, since I was struggling with a lot of things, but that's not important. Let's move on to the episodes, since they were like the first part, the Phoenix King, showed us how nefarious the Fire Lord actually is and how evil his plan was. He was planning a mass genocide and eradication of all life. I just don't know how you can actually make that sound good in any way. And it was amazing. We got to see him go crazy as well when Azula was revealed that no, Firelord was going to leave her behind. She panicked, and it was so cool to see that. But then she was revealed that she would be leading the country, but still, I really enjoyed this first part. It was such an amazing build-up. I have not much else to say. You can go watch the commentary. I did comment a lot during this episode still. Then the Old Masters, part 2, episode 19. We got to see the whole White Lotus thing come to fruition. I was very happy about this, but upon retrospection and watching this, I've watched the finale now like 3 times, I think. I'm unfortunately going to say that this was again an episode that they could have actually cut. But I'm glad they didn't. It was amazing. But it feels a lot like filler. But it's very fun, and it has that very important scene with Zuko reuniting with Iroh, and it was so heartwarming. I really enjoyed it. But again, it had some things that were not really that meaningful. It was more of a calm down episode between the fourth, what am I saying? The previous episode's high tension, and also we got to see Aang wrestle with the fact that he needs to kill the Fire Lord. And that's an interesting and important aspect that we got to see him handle, and I very much appreciate how slowly they basically put 1 episode for that question. I like that. Then part 3, episode 16, Into the Inferno. And this is by all regards, I'm going to say that this is my favorite episode of Avatar. And possibly this is in the top 5 of my most favorite episodes of anything ever. And that's because we got the Agni Kai between Azula and Zuko, and it was just poetic justice how Azula was brought down. Actually, was she brought down in the 4th part? I don't remember. It doesn't matter. I'm just gonna... No, she was brought down in the 4th episode. But the whole Agni Kai, it symbolizes how the culmination of how basically walking down the same path can lead to 2 different, very different and varied results, with Azula going crazy and Zuko turning good. And that's what hatred does to you. If you let it control you, you become Azula, but if you if you let it go, you go down the path of Zuko and become good. It's hard to put in the words, but it was beautiful. The whole fight was the perspective of blue fire and red fire was just beautiful in my opinion, artistically speaking, and it was by every regards, in my opinion, a beautiful fight scene. Also, the fight between Fire Lord and Aang was amazing. It was so cool. Then the episode 4. I'm gonna discuss a few things. I'm not gonna talk about more about that Agni Kai because that was, well, you might have not seen it in the commentary itself because the camera is so poor, but I did actually cry during that scene. I'm not even ashamed to admit that. It was just beautiful. I I don't know, it was so beautiful. I'm still very glad about that. It still fills my heart with joy. Then the episode 4, and I'm gonna just talk about a few things. First off, the bullshit Deus Ex Machina rock that awakened Aang's avatar state. Yeah, I didn't comment on that. I don't mind. I don't mind that. At all. I don't mind Aang's avatar state again being awakened by him slamming against a rock. I don't mind that at all. It just shows that even though you are the destined hero, you do sometimes need luck to overcome the forces of evil. But but technically speaking, that could also be considered predeterministic future, where it was always meant to be that Aang would lose his avatar state for a while and then reawaken it here. And then we got to the badass scene where Aang was just kicking Firelord's ass. And I didn't think that but I think that the perspective when the tables flipped, when Avatar Aang reawakened the Avatar state and became, well, badass, and Firelord had really no chances anymore. I don't think it was really that bad that the Fire Lord had no chances anymore, since we had already seen him being more than a match for the Avatar, or basically defeating him. And then the Avatar state happened, and things got a little messy. And I really just like that. And, well, it's an amazing fight, and it still is enjoyable. And even though it was brought by a Deus Ex Machina rock, I don't think that's too bad, so to say. I don't mind that. I see why people would. It's a Deus Ex Machina. But I don't. Even though it kind of goes against my critical rules. But I can defend it. Not well, but I can defend it, and there are reasons for it to exist in such a way that Aang didn't actually just reawaken it through other means or something like that. I mean, there were certainly ways they could have done if they had more episodes, but I don't find it being this way. And then, what was I supposed to talk? Oh, the energy bending. I wanna say I called it, but I was more thinking about firebending, not just a surprising new way of bending that wasn't even named until one of you subscribers or the comments actually named it, and I'm kind of glad they did. But it's something that I don't actually think it's that silly, and I also have an explanation for it in a purely scientific way. Unfortunately, though, it can be very much compared to lobotomy or brainwashing. Let's say it's brainwashing, and let's not compare it to lobotomy, since that's a lot more heavily loaded word. And brainwashing is a lot more easier, and it's a lot more easily explained through electric conduction to brain. It's still a pretty hairy subject, but it's something that I could actually explain. And the way I can actually explain that, I'm just gonna quickly, I'm gonna talk about it more in the whole bending theory video. Quickly, people have chakras, actual chakras that they could channel, and using the electricity in their body, they can actually invoke the powers of the elements in a way. That's a little more different, how the explanation will be a lot more detailed in the bending theory video, but that's it. That's the theory in basics. You can use your own body's electrical currents to actually move elements around. And that's not a joke. And I think that people the human race will in some point evolve into that point that they can do that easily. And then the energy bending basically means that the receptors in your body that allow you to control the electrical currents, you burn those out. In a way, eternally burning your ability to bend. So it doesn't bother me in the slightest. Okay, then let's talk about the bittersweet ending. I was really happy that they ended it in a very positive note. I mean, would you rather have the entire world burn? Would you rather have the Avatar sacrifice his morals? I'm happy the way it turned out. It could have turned out differently, and I wonder how, again, this is something that one of the comments pointed out, I wonder what would have happened if they would have allowed killing or death in the final scenes. It could have turned out a lot different if the show was at least PG-15 or not 18. So, But I'm still glad that it turned out the way it did. Even though it's a lot more tamer, it's by no means, it just fits a lot more into the mood of the show. And I'm really happy about that. Okay. Yeah. And the whole ending was just really fun and really sweet and happy. So positive. And it was also very iconic for actually see the Aang, well, get together with Katara, and it was really happy about it. I was really happy about that. And it was really handled kind of well in my books, and very beautifully, and with very minimalistic dialogue. Someone pointed out that Katara leaned into the kiss other than instead of Aang, and how she initiated it and how that represents other things, but that's not the topic for today. That's definitely true, and that's good, but that's nothing to talk about here. But yeah, I was really satisfied with how the series ended. And the ending question, where is my mother? That gives us a promise of the future. And I by no means think that it's really just a cock tease. I mean, I think it's a very cool way to promise that there might be something in the future. And it's not an important question that leaves us really yearning too much, but it's something that promises that there could be more in the future. And I'm glad about that. Yeah, I have nothing else to say, so this has been the season review vlog. There are many things that I didn't actually talk about in this, and that's for a reason. Ding! But yeah, there is a reason why I don't talk about many of the things, and those will be saved for other videos. So rest assured, even though this is the final season review vlog for Avatar, this is by no means the last video I will do about Avatar. I have many ideas. But most of all, I am glad that you have been here with me. Again, I feel like I'm thanking you too much, or maybe too often rather. But I want to, there are so little ways I can present my gratitude to you, other than to say thank you so much. You have made me very happy for giving me the time of your day. And it means a lot more to me than many other things in the world mean. I'm not going to say everything, but it means a lot to me. And just the fact that you are willing to share your opinions with me is very important for me. The discussions we have in the comments is very important for me, and I'm still replying to comments in my older videos, and I'm very glad that people still comment on those. I am always eternally grateful, even if you don't comment, even if you don't like or subscribe. That's not important. I mean, I don't personally care about the subscription count that much. I mean, currently I don't get a cent out of these videos, and I'm happy to keep it that way, because these are meant for your entertainment and for my entertainment as well, but that's besides the point. So, thank you so much for being with me. Thank you so much for listening. This has been probably over an hour. I don't know, you can see the title. And most of all, stay awesome. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day. Gunmu out.